your future.
When discussing my approach to writing to fellow creatives, there's a lot of white noise I need to cut through to get my ideas across. In those cases, I just can't help walking away having the feeling that people just don't get it. For example, before I wrote my first novels, I wrote short stories to explore the various themes, factions and characters. Some of these I included in my now published anthologies. I explained this process in a separate video. Once you read these stories, you'll conclude they don't have clear protagonists, and yet some of these characters became beloved by many of my readers. Despite some having books dedicated to them, I still don't consider these characters to be protagonists. This is relevant because in a recent positive review of my latest book that is now on Kickstarter, The Casket Girls, a complaint was that the book didn't have clear protagonists. And I'll be fair, it was a point of concern, but no proofreader objected to this fact. As a reviewer, however, there's something you need to point out. In an overall positive review, such statements can stick out like a sore thumb, making them more severe than they might actually be. A problem when writing reviews is that you put a magnifying glass on an issue that is there, but has little effect on your enjoyment of a work of fiction. But what stands out to me is the question, are protagonists essential? And it all comes back to my approach to world building. For those new here, I'm the author of the Association of Ishtar. My last two novelettes, Enwin and The Casket Girls, are my first attempts at a multi-part miniseries exploring specific topics inside the setting. In this video, I'll explain why these smaller books are different from the novels, and for that matter, why I haven't started work on my third novel. And it has everything to do with the kind of experience I want to create with my series. This is David Alborough. I made a video explaining his life up to the events of the series' first novel, The Wrench in the Machine. In this book, he could be considered the protagonist. I read all my books, although chronological, as standalone, ergo, Alborough is not a necessity for the subsequent books. However, whenever people read the premise of the second novel, they ask, wait, Alborough isn't in this? That statement is what inspired his inclusion in Book 2, Bound for the Styx. And I'm glad I did. My point is that, to my surprise, readers got really attached to the character. And that kind of surprised me because I didn't write him as a protagonist. I did no prep work for his creation, I simply started writing him as an inspector confronted with a strange murder case, and that's it. And yet, I keep getting statements how attached people got to the characters like Alborough and some of my other POV characters. So why is that? What is it that I'm trying to achieve? This is Starship Troopers by Robert Heinlein, an often misrepresented piece of fiction, especially by people who only seen the movie or heard about the presumed contents. One reason for this, it's not intended as fiction. Robert Heinlein was a political activist, and Starship Troopers is a political essay. This is the reason why, for example, the book abruptly ends without even a climax. The point was not to create a fictional universe, but to explore his ideas for a utopian society, and more importantly, why he believes what he believes. So when a character explains the principles of citizenship in this universe, it's not a character, but Heinlein himself vocalizing his ideas through said character. Personally, I think it's quite appealing. Rico, the point of view character, is a very down-to-earth guy. He's relatable because he would respond to tragedy like we would. With anger. He's not a chosen one who has his opponents pointed out to him, he's just another soldier that we just happen to follow along the way. As Rico grows through the ranks, he gets explained Heinlein's approach to leadership, for example, through his superior officers who are unhappy with his performance. And then there is the highly controversial approach to physical punishment in the story. I'll leave it at that. But what does that have to do with the Association of Ishtar and the Casket Girls in particular? With one of my biggest complaints about writing promoted in Hollywood and BookTube is the non-stop elevation of the hero's journey as described by Joseph Campbell. If you, a viewer of my channel, don't know what I'm talking about, there are a gazillion videos explaining the hero's journey and Campbell's book A Hero with 1,000 Faces. What I want you to take away from this video is that, first of all, and I cannot stress this enough, the Hero of 1,000 Faces is not a manual. It's an anthropological study of stories from across the globe. Second, there are a few things wrong with the theory itself, but it's also very generalizing. For example, somebody wrote a review of the Casket Girls. This attracted Bonsard Bokel's interest because, despite giving the book his full recommendation, the reviewer objected to the absence of a clear protagonist. This piqued Bonsard's interest because A. There is no arguing about personal taste, but B. Bonsard also feels that the reader and creatives don't understand what he's trying to accomplish. So he decides to sit down and start structuring his thoughts on the subject by writing a video essay. But during this progress, he gets thwarted by his cat Sprocket, who knows the best way to get his attention is by playing with his 3D printed miniatures. But despite the cat's best efforts, Bonsard manages to structure his ideas and publish the video. Journey concluded! My point is that the theory can be projected onto any story and its included characters. But in discussions surrounding the topic, there's a clear game of telephone going on regarding Campbell's intentions. Especially the commonly held belief that all stories should follow this structure and therefore ought to be low concept. This comes back to my previous claims that mainstream writers do not understand high concept writing. For those who heard this for the first time, yes, that is a thing, and again I'll refer to a previous video on the topic. So what did I want to achieve with the Casket Girls? Heinlein was a student of politics. I am a student of history. My definition of the steampunk genre is cyberpunk in the past. When visually designing characters, I start with a historical reference and build upon that. When I write stories, I don't write about heroes. I write about people in peculiar situations. In the case of the Association of Ishtar, investigators confronted with unique problems that need extraordinary solutions. Solutions that can often not be exercised. And sometimes they are. In the Association of Ishtar, there are rifts opening up around the world. These rifts spawn alien life forms. Alright, that brings us to the question, how do they combat these life forms? And that is where the French Imperial Penal Legion comes in. That brings again the question, how do they do it? By using futuristic technology unique to them, like the mechas called CBs that are piloted by the Casket Girls. However, these women are not like anime protagonists who can win battles by screaming really loud at the viewing screen. The CBs were written as something that could be credible, and can be upgraded, but I'll get on that topic of power levels at some other time. The point is that the characters are grounded, and the technology barely able to combat the threats they're facing. But more importantly, I wanted to explore what piloting these machines was like. How do they work? How do they get from point A to point B in a world with low-tech infrastructure and transportation? How do these troops sleep? How is the order maintained? What is the relationship between the officers and the soldiers? What problems do they face? I wouldn't call the Casket Girls an essay, but it's definitely an exploration of the life in the Penal Legion and the careers of certain convicts as they go their own way in this world of steampunk and cosmic mysteries. So it's not about a hero's journey, although that can be projected on it at the end of the miniseries. But there is no big evil bad guy, not a single source that is responsible for this world's problems, just people with various interests and ideas on how these should be resolved. And this is one of the reasons the Association of Ishtar is not front and center in its own stories. Like Johnny Rico in Starship Troopers, they were conceived as a POV character. In the short stories, they are the outsiders looking into various situations, and the wrench in the machine does the opposite. What does the association look like from the outside? That is what the character of David Alborough is, an inspector judging the association and its actions from the point of view of an everyman with enough knowledge about the world to put him into a larger context. And I think that is what makes him appealing to my readers. He's not a hero confronting his enemies from the position of being the chosen one. He's a normal guy trying to do the right thing when confronted with extraordinary situations. This is no different from the cosmic horror stories by Lovecraft and Howard. What makes the Cthulhu mythos appealing isn't the human characters, but its gods and aliens. This goes for most horror and science fiction. What would Nightmare on Elm Street be without Freddy? What would Star Trek be without aliens? And so on. Now, I don't want to go on another tangent about my preference for high concept, I just want to explain why I think there's a disconnect between me and fellow creatives. The hero's journey provides an easy to follow formula from the first act to the final scene. High concept, not so much. High concept requires a vision of what you want to explore while also holding the reader's attention. And I suspect that through my experiences and interviews, it's either a skill you have or you don't. So, BookTube rarely discusses it, and the mainstream writers tend to be clueless. And that brings us to the end of this video. Do I have a solution for this problem? Well, at this point I think we can only increase awareness of this situation. So, here it is. So, quick announcement everyone, thank you for watching first of all. Don't forget to comment, like and subscribe and all that jazz. We're currently wrapping up the Kickstarter for the Casket Girls. Now, if you enjoy the art in this show, it's all part of our illustrated works, and we are making more illustrated videos on the Association of Ishtar universe. However, I've also been getting requests to do more fantasy related stuff, like how you can use the steampunk philosophy in your fantasy settings. However, I actually have worked on such scripts, but the problem is I really want to commission original art for that so I can really bring the point across, because what I'm talking about, as far as I can tell, has never been done before. However, that's costing me money, and I'm already struggling to pay my artists for the current steampunk series that I'm working on. So my request is that you go check out our REAM stories page. It's kind of like a Patreon for readers and writers. By becoming a free follower on there, you'll already get free access to short stories that are posted every month. And to sweeten the deal, I'm gonna throw in some free wallpapers in there just for the people who are following me on REAM stories. So there's that. However, you can also become a paying member, in which case you'll get access to all the short stories, and on the higher tiers you'll also get access to all our ebooks, and at the higher tiers you'll also get free STL files for your printing pleasure, which you can also use in our upcoming role-playing game. Yes, we are working on a role-playing game that we hope to present on Spiel later this year. I'll make a more official announcement about that at some point. So yeah, there's a quick preview for you. And yeah, we've got more exciting collaborations in regard to the role-playing games coming up. If you want to become involved in playtesting, go join our Discord so I can take you along in that process. And of course, consider subscribing to our newsletter on associationofishtar.com. And something that REAM Stories is working on, which is very cool, is that they are looking to integrate Kickstarter into REAM, which means if you're supporting our projects on Kickstarter, you'll get a discount. How that's exactly going to work, I do not know yet, but I know they are working on that. So go check out our REAM Stories page. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all for listening, and as always, make things your way. Good night.